Today we will be setting up a weaving on a loom. This will be a weaving that would be done on one side of the loom and would be flat when completed. We will need a cardboard notched loom and some yarn. You'll want to be careful about noticing where the end of the string is on your yarn, and you may need to take turns with the other people at your table if you only have one skein of yarn at each table. The color that we're starting with today doesn't matter because we won't actually see it in our final product. The strings that we're putting on our loom today are called the warp strings, and they'll hold the actual colored yarn, the weft, in place as we weave. What we need to do first is we need to find the end of our string and line it up with the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to then attach it with a piece of tape so that there's about 4 inches of string, like a little tail off of the top. Using a small piece of tape, I'm going to tape the string right there, and it's important that we don't tape it with no extra because we'll need to make a knot with it later on. So we need that room in our string so we can make a knot. So I'm using a tiny piece of tape and taping it to the upper left-hand corner. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand and slide it down the string and line it up into the first notch on the bottom. Now this is where it gets a little bit complicated because we need to have strings that go around the back so that we can use them later on to tie off our project. So once it's through the notch at the bottom, the string is going to go up the back through the notch at the top, and every time I get to the top I flip it so that I can still see my strings and so that we can keep going. Essentially we're going to be going around and around and around, and every time we get to the top or the bottom we use a new notch. So since I went through the notch at the top, that means I slide back down to the bottom, but instead of going through the same notch as the first time, this time I go through the second notch. Then I flip it over so I can always see the side that I'm working on at the top, and then back down to the bottom. You'll notice on the front it's a little bit crooked. That's okay because this side that's the angled side is actually going to eventually become the back of our weaving. I'm going to go through my whole loom like this, from the top to the bottom all the way around. I'm winding around the front and the back as I go. I'm being very careful so that my string doesn't tangle. I'm holding it in tension just a little bit so that it doesn't have a lot of loose string. That'll help keep my weft strings secure when I start to weave tomorrow. Once I've gone all the way across, I'm going to need to start thinking about what I will do to tie my strings off. So I'm almost there. I've got about 5 more notches. 4. It's okay if you aren't going as fast as I am because I've done this many times before, and this is the first time you've done this. Alright, I'm at the last notch on the bottom. I'm at the last notch on the top. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is where we need to make our knot. And I ideally want to make a knot before I cut any strings because I don't want to have my strings end up being too short. This is where I'm going to actually unhook that string that I taped down, and I'm going to take it and take the leftover string and make a knot right here. Now if you're realizing I actually am having trouble tying a knot to a string, now that we know where a knot is going to be, we're going to use our scissors to cut off the yarn. Then you can pass this to someone else at your table who hasn't started their process yet. Now to make a knot to tie this off, we need to make sure our knot is going to be really secure and really firm. I don't want to make it too loose, so you will need a partner for this step. Probably. I'm going to take my string, just overlap them, and cross one under. So I've got a basic knot. Then I'm going to pull really tight and make a knot again on top of that. And you could even do 3 knots instead of 2. I'm holding it with my finger. This is why it'll be helpful for you to have someone else to hold it so you can use both hands to tie a knot. And then just for extra security, I'm going to tie it one more time. Now this side that has our diagonal is going to be the back. This side that has the nice parallel lines will be the front of our loom. We're almost done. The last thing we need is a tiny piece of tape. I'm going to put it at the top on the back, and then on top of the tape I'm going to write my name. These will all look really similar today, so it's important we label our name with a piece of tape. We're using tape instead of writing on the cardboard because lots of other students will be using these looms. We can keep reusing them, which is good and eco-friendly. So we're labeling on the tape with our name, and that's the last step for our looms.